I showed at the top of the show, Greg, how close Iran is getting to 9 nuclear bombs. Now, for Israel, of course, that could mean the total destruction of the world's only Jewish state. It just would, like I said, a third of the size of Tasmania. How many bombs would that take? But what would it mean for the rest of the world, Iran having nuclear weapons?
Well, Andrew, I explore this in a column tomorrow. What we are seeing is two terrible trends in the contemporary world. I mean, we're seeing 1,000 terrible trends, but we're seeing nuclear weapons roar back into the centre of all strategic calculations, and we're seeing the breakdown of American extended nuclear deterrence. All American allies except Israel and Britain and France don't have nuclear weapons of their own, which means we all shelter under extended American nuclear deterrence. That means if a nuclear weapon state struck us with a nuclear weapon, America would strike them with a nuclear weapon. But if more semi-rogue states like North Korea and Iran get nuclear weapons, not only are they then impossible to deter within their own region, because if you're taking serious military action against them, they'll threaten nuclear weapons against you. But the development of missile technology means that North Korea and Iran will soon be able to hit the United States itself with missiles. That means if North Korea is having a confrontation with South Korea and America intervenes, North Korea can threaten Los Angeles and San Francisco with nuclear annihilation. And if Iran gets the nuclear bomb, it will also be able to do that. And we know that China proliferated nuclear technology to Pakistan and to Iran precisely to hurt India and to hurt America. All this proliferation ultimately comes from China and some of it from North Korea, from China through North Korea. And it would be a diabolical strategic development for the world if Iran gets nuclear weapons. And if it does, then quite sensibly, probably Saudi Arabia and other nations in the Middle East would also want nuclear weapons to provide for their own security. And a world in which we go from sort of 7 or 8 nuclear weapon states to maybe 10 or 12 or 15 is 1,000 times more dangerous.
Particularly when one of those countries is led by what we would consider irrational leadership with religious motivations, end of the world type of motivations that are, different moral paradigm completely that we cannot talk them out of. Just quickly, Greg, and this is one of the things that's driving China is this belief that the West is in collapse, that America is in collapse. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong. That is actually a firm belief. The dictator of China mentions it often. There is indeed almost a civil war right now in America. I exaggerate a bit, but crikey from the pictures. And it's whipped along by reckless Democrat politicians. These rioters in Los Angeles, waving Mexican flags, attacking federal agents trying to deport illegal immigrants. The Democrat assemblywoman who posted a picture of Donald Trump being beheaded. A Democrat deputy mayor urging protesters to fight. Here he is.
Leave our people alone because we will fight and we defend them.
And then, Greg, there's the appalling Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who ran for vice president last year, telling Democrats to actually get meaner.
Because I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator? It's because he is. It's because he is. The governor's being mean, and the governor's speaking out on that. Well, maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner. Maybe it's time for us to be a little more fierce. Because we have to ferociously push back on this.
And look at this U-turn from this hypocrite. 2 weeks ago he said that. Then a nutter, wearing a rubber mask, pretending to be a policeman, assassinated 2 Democrat politicians in Walz's own state, shot another, and now Walz is preaching love instead. Here he is.
Now's the time for us to recommit to the core values of this country. And each and every one of us can do it. Talk to a neighbor rather than arguing. Debate an issue. Shake hands. Find common ground.
Frankly, Greg, the man's a scumbag, but what is happening to America?
Well, Andrew, I agree with you absolutely, but at the risk of sounding like a pathetic, simpering globalist centrist, I'd say both sides of American politics are I would say both sides of American politics are pretty much equally guilty at this. Trump himself, Trump has a lot of pluses and a lot of minuses, but Trump himself speaks of his domestic opponents in the most often vile and disgusting terms, and refers to people routinely as rapists and murderers and criminals and crooked and all the rest of it. And I think, in a sense, this terrible conflagration in Los Angeles has suited both Donald Trump and Gavin Newsom perfectly well, because in America you win by exciting your base, and Trump and Newsom both got to excite their base by demonising each other. So I think there is a terrible breakdown of basic civility in America. I urge people to watch that wonderful movie Reagan. Not only is it a different time in America, but Reagan is just a different leader, He'd just laugh at you if you insulted him. He'd smile. And I think both sides of American politics, driven partly by social media, are really very dangerously demonising each other, when the worst of them generally are that they're idiots. They're not really murderers and, wannabe
Greg,
dictators and scumbags and all the rest of it.
If you thought you're getting an argument from me, you're wrong. I agree with you completely. I would also add George W. Bush, Bush Jr., to that list of people that believed in civility even to their worst enemies. Thank you so much indeed for your time.